Alright, guys, I have given myself about 40 minutes to film after getting everything set up and things like that so we can have a discussion today because I've got dinner cooking and a crock pot out there and it's going to be done in about 40 minutes. And I'm really hoping that I don't have to cut off and run and finish dinner and come back. I'm hoping we can have a great discussion and not take 5 years to talk about it. But knowing me, I usually end up rambling on for 5 years with you guys. So we're gonna find out if I actually can make it or if I'll have to take 2 times of filming. It won't matter for you guys because, I'll just edit it together and we'll be great. You'll be good to go for this discussion and we will make sure that we get every bit covered. But we're gonna have some fun to see if I can actually make it in the correct time without rambling on too much. Which means we should probably just get right into today's class so that way we can have a great discussion and get to it. All right, let's jump right in. Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today's class is going to be on the start of our next book in the Legend of Drizzt series, or the Dark Elf Trilogy. Exile, chapters 1 through 5. So we are in a beginning of a brand new book, but in the middle of our trilogy here. So it'll be really interesting to discuss with you guys what's going on and what this new book is bringing to the table, and talk about some of the characters that have really shown in these set of chapters, because I feel like we've got several different characters that are either have changed, are more prominent, are really key characters. So today is going to be mostly a character discussion, as well as we'll start discuss a little bit about starting this book, like we usually do when starting a new book. And yeah, I think it will be a great discussion. I think the beginning of this book is pretty interesting, and we will have a little bit of a comparison between the two. So really looking forward to this discussion. Let's go ahead and start with our recap as always. So we have quite a few things that happen in this first set of chapters, even if it doesn't totally feel that way. Matron Malice, we start off with Matron Malice. Well, we start off with the prelude and the hunter sections, but I'm going to just start with chapter 1 with our recap here. And we've got Matron Malice, and which is House Do'Urden in general. And they're still at war with House Hunnet. And they have hired a mercenary group that they've used in the past 10 years since our last book. They've hired this group specifically for one particular hit that they're waiting on a response from, a noble murder. So Geralex, the main head of the mercenary company, comes in, says they completed the task, and as they're finishing up their discussion about it, House Hunnet is attacking House Do'Urden. So House Do'Urden has to fight back, but they're not doing so well. So Malice decides to hire Geralex and their mercenary group to be able to win the tide of the war, and she ends up having enough money to make him go ahead and do that. So Do'Urden's house wins this war because of the mercenaries' help. After the battle, Malice is very happy with how things turned out, and she's going to get summoned by Matron Banner, who is the head of House 1, and things don't turn out quite like she expected. Instead, Matron Banner is expecting her to take Sinnefe, the house or the matron of House Hunnet, into her house and make her the eldest daughter of House Do'Urden, and it's supposed to help strengthen that their house because they are out of Lolth's favor. So she ends up having no choice but to agree, though she doesn't really want to do so. And at the end, she realizes that she must win back Lolth's favor, otherwise their house is dead in the water. It's going to be very easy to be attacked and to be killed if they don't get back in Lolth's favor. So she demands that her house bring her Drizzt. Meanwhile, Drizzt is living in a cave right now, and we're seeing him kind of doing his daily stuff. He had to talk to the king of the, what are they called again? The Myconids, I think is how it's said, to renegotiate some peace after a basilisk attack and having a new king. And Drizzt is trying to regain his lost Rothe. I think, again, that's how you would say that word, Rothe. And as he's out trying to collect them with Guinevere, he ends up hearing the deep gnomes working. And he watches them for a while and kind of follows them because he is so lonely and so lost out there that he just likes hearing some kind of interaction. He's really interested in the deep gnomes and what they're doing. But his hunter's instinct stops him from getting too close to them and from going in after they're going back to their home. So he ends up just going back to his cave instead. Meanwhile, or like not really meanwhile, it's after he kind of gets back to the cave and he's kind of trying to get back in his routines of things that he does out in the Underdark. Briza and Dinan are having a group search party for Drizzt, and they end up coming across him and notice that he is there. They try to follow him, try to trap him. He's too smart and it doesn't work. And instead he ends up confronting them. And Briza thinks that she's able to convince him to come back, trying to get him, and it doesn't work. He ends up almost killing Briza before both of them flee. And he really was actually planning on murdering Briza. Guinevere is the only one that is the reason that he was stopped him from doing so. So they escape, and they're pretty terrified of him. And Drizzt himself is kind of, going through internal turmoil because he almost went against everything that he believed in, which is not killing another drow. And then almost did kill another drow, and he realizes that he's losing himself out in the Underdark. So he decides, I have to go to the Deep Gnomes. I'm not going to go back to Mesa Branson, but I'm going to go to the Deep Gnomes, and if they kill me, they kill me, but if not, I need some interaction, so I'm going to go to the Deep Gnomes and have them capture him. And that's what he does. He does go there, he does come to their gates, and he surrenders to them. And they tie him up and take him inside as a prisoner. At the Do'Urden home, meanwhile, Malice is understanding that her family is not going to be able to get Drizzt on their own. So she does a whole ceremony to call Lolth's handmaiden to get permission to have Zincarla. And the Zincarla is supposed to be to bring Zack back to life and have Zack kill Drizzt. And that be the ultimate punishment and payback for Drizzt's sins against Lolth and his family. Lolth accepts the sacrifice of Sinafe to do the Zincarla, and that access has been granted. So that's what we've got going on in these 5 chapters. It's quite a lot, honestly. We've got battles, we've got Drizzt going out there, we've got the Deep Gnome stuff, we've got the Zincarla stuff going on, lots of different political things. So quite a lot going on in these first 5 chapters. We've definitely started this book out strong. So let's do that as our first discussion, which is the actual start of this book. How are we starting this book, and how have things changed from the start of this book from the end of the last book? Now, if you're following along with the Doom of the Dark Sword, with the Dark Sword trilogy, you know that we already talked about how the start of that book is like right at the end of one book, we pick up right at the beginning of the next book. There's no time in between. This one, on the other hand, is a 10-year time gap. 10 years is a long time. Now, obviously, the Drow live a long time. So it's not big time gap in the terms of like their lifespan, But 10 years is a long time for characters that have been experiencing things that we haven't seen. So we have some major changes going on and happening in the beginning of this story. Drizzt, for example, is a very different person than when we left him. He is now a hunter, somebody who is a survivalist. He is not the Drizzt that we knew of in Mesobaranzan, and that is clear right away. He obviously didn't have the life that he thought he would out in the Underdark. It did not go as he had hoped so. We had, at the end of the last book, hope for a new beginning. We had a nice, more uplifting feeling like things are going to change and they're going to be better than the life that he had with his family. And now, obviously, things are falling apart because he is not where he thought he was going to be. The tone is really depressing. We've got a lot of hate and a lot of deep, dark stuff happening right now, which, I mean, it's the Underdark. What were we supposed to expect? The whole last book was all dark and depressing. But we left it in a different way when we left. But then after these 10 years of gap, we're back down into the depth of despair almost because life is just not great. Not great for Drizzt, not great for the Do'Urdens, though we don't really care if it's going great for the Do'Urdens, do we? I don't know. Maybe you do. I feel like they made their bed. They can lie in it. And it's true to society. So were we supposed to expect happiness and smiles? Probably not. It's interesting that Drizzt has, like, changed so much, and then, like, the Do'Urden house has really stagnated, and the fact that House Do'Urden is pretty much in the same place at the very, very beginning of this book that they were in at the end of the last book, which is having a battle with House Hunnet, and they haven't made any major progress. They haven't made any major changes. They're just kind of stagnated until the battle between House Hunnet and House Do'Urden actually took place. So, in some ways, Do'Urden were just, like, picking back up, like it was yesterday. And then Drizzt has the major change in him that we have to contend with and compare with at the end of the last book. We kind of have to relearn where Drizzt is in his life. And I do think it's super interesting that Book 1 and Book 2 both started with a house war with Do'Urden. And it just kind of is flipped because Do'Urden in the last one was the attacker and the aggressor. For this book, House Hunnet is the attacker and the aggressor against Do'Urden, and they're the ones on the back foot. So even though House Do'Urden wins both of them, it's really an opposite way. Like, I mean, they really barely won by the skin of their teeth. They were not confident at all. So it's super interesting that both of these books start almost the exact same way. And it's kind of like a birth of a new Drizzt, at least for us. Obviously, this has been a change that's been happening over 10 years. But for us, we're just seeing this new Drizzt and realizing how much he's changed. And in the first book, he was actually born on the day they were attacking. So, overall, a lot of interesting things going on. Sorry, guys. At the start of this book. So, I just think it's really interesting that we have the author starting us off at this moment, 10 years later, and just realizing that we're finally resolving House Do'Urden's problem. They've had 10 years to finally dissolve that war and win. And Drizzt is now slowly sinking into madness, and we're not even sure if we're going to get Drizzt back. It's a very different starting point, and I think that it's super, super interesting that the author chose to leave that 10-year time gap for us. And that we are now getting back into this world with a very different perspective now. What did you think? Did you feel like, I mean, not that I felt like it was jarring to, like, go from the end of the one book. I feel like the transition is pretty smooth. They set it up pretty smoothly. but I just think that it is a big time skip, that most stories don't have quite that much time in between each book. So how do you feel about the start of this book and the 10-year time gap that we had in between? I'd just love to know your opinion on this and where you see things going from here. So first character I want to talk to you about is Drizzt himself. Of course, he is the main character. It is the Legend of Drizzt for the overall series. And Drizzt is the person that we, or at least I, care about the most. I assume that for most of you, it is probably Drizzt that we care about the most, since he is the one who is fighting Drow society. But he is in a very different place, as I've already mentioned, in this beginning of this book. He has sunk very, very, very far from where he used to be. He is very different than who he used to be. This experience for him has really taken its toll. He is losing himself in the madness of the Underdark, and it's really sad to see. He is losing himself from loneliness, from having to just be a mindless murderer for all of these creatures that, if he doesn't kill, is just gonna be against his survival. He'll die. You know, he's really just in a place where he's just fighting for his life day after day, with no one to be with, no one to care about him, no one for him to care about other than his cat, Guinevere. It's really just an instinctive way of living, an instinctual way of living, which is, he talks about himself, like, you know, he's just really living as the hunter. That's all he's doing day in and day out, and there's nothing for him to hold on to anymore to keep himself civilized. And that is really wearing down on him. He is struggling. He even almost kills his sister. And really, if it hadn't been for the interference of Guinevere, he would have killed his sister. No questions asked. And the whole reason he left Mesopranzan was that way he wouldn't have to kill people. So that way he could stick to his values, and that his values were what he was living for. The whole reason he's out here, and he almost compromised everything, and luckily his friend saved him from having to have that guilt on his shoulders. He just hungers for someone to talk to, for someone to interact with, for someone to be out there with him. Guinevere is a great companion, but she's not around 100% of the time. And he really doesn't have that same connection with Guinevere as he does to, like, another person who can actually talk back to him and have a conversation. So I feel really sad for Drizzt at this point. He is not doing well, and it's really sad to see that his hopeful beginning of going out in the Underdark and starting to have a new life and getting away from his family and the torment of, you know, all the corruption really has not turned out well, has not gone as he had hoped and as he had planned. And he is sinking away. He is really losing himself, which really helps foster that despair and that tone of the beginning of this book. However, I do really admire him and the fact that he never wants things in all of this. Let's go back to Mesopranzan. I can't hack it out here. Let's go back, and I will just deal with Drow society and be willing to kill Drow or to compromise my morals in order to not, you know, go mad. Instead, even when Briza and Dinan come looking for him, he rejects them. He still rejects them, so much so that he almost compromised those values that he was trying to save. So instead, he realizes instead of losing himself, he's going to go to the deep gnomes and risk being killed and ending his existence instead of going back to the Drow society. So I give him 100% props for that, is that in the face of temptation, by his family, he rejects them. He's like, nope, don't think so. There was a reason that I left you, and I'm not going back. And then second, when he realizes that he has to make a change, that he can no longer live like this before he just completely loses it, he decides instead to go to his enemies and to the deep gnomes and have a chance there and very possibly die, then continue living the life that he's living. So I give him props for sticking to his guns and not compromising or settling or anything else in order to save his sanity. He's like, I'm done with that life. I'm going to make a new life, even if that chance leads me to being killed. And the one positive thing from all of this is that he is basically an unstoppable fighter. I don't know if there'll be anybody in at least Mesobaranzan who can match his fighting skill. He is deadly, completely and utterly deadly, and can just take out anything or anybody that he wants. Even Briza is like, I ain't going against him again. That did not turn out well for me, and I don't know if there's anybody who can stop him. So he has flourished in his already high standards of fighting. He is already flourishing even more, which is what has helped him to survive and to make it through all these deadly beasts that could easily kill him otherwise. So we're in a totally new place with Drizzt. We're going to see if he is able to come out of this, if he is going to, be able to collect himself and be back to some semblance of who he was. Obviously, with these 10 years of experience, he's not going to be the same person he was ever again. But maybe he will be able to regain some of that Drizztness that we are missing right now, some of that core values and that more of a civilized nature that we know, that gentler nature that we know that he can have. So we're going to find out how he continues to grow. So it's pretty interesting. We had a change and a growth in him as we read book 1. And then this gap now has also changed and grown him into a new person. And now, from this starting point, we will continue to see how he grows and changes again as a character. So I do really appreciate that we have a bunch of different times and cycles of his life that we see the growth and the change that it's led for him. What do you think? How do you feel about Drizzt and how he is at this moment? Are you worried about him? Do you like these changes in him? How do you think he will progress further? I'm assuming he's not going to be killed by the gnomes in the fact that there is more book to read. But maybe he will have problems there, and that will lead to another change in him as well. So let me know your thoughts and your feelings. I'd really love to know them. Next, let's talk about Malice. For a second there, I was like, wait, is that her name? I don't know why I had like a blank where I was like, is that right? But yes, a Matron Malice. We have not talked about her very much in the last book, even though she was an important character. I don't really feel like we really had much, or at least I didn't feel like I had much to bring up in terms of her character. But she is the very forefront of a good portion of these first 5 chapters. So I really feel like it's about time that we talk about her, talk a little bit about what she's doing. She's a consistent character at this point for me. She hasn't really had growth or change or anything different. Matron Malice has always been Matron Malice, and that doesn't make her a bad character. It doesn't mean that she doesn't have an importance and that she's two-dimensional or anything like that. She is very much a full character, but she hasn't had any growth or changes, really. She is just evil and a bad guy at this point, just one that we happen to know a lot about. So we really see in this set of chapters how very arrogant and how much of a risk taker she is. Pardon me, guys. We already saw that she was a risk taker in the first book, and the fact that she does push her boundaries. But we really see it in this set of chapters in the fact that she is out of Lolth's favor. She is not doing well. Her house is barely surviving, and she is calling upon Lolth again to give her another favor. Like, how much more of a risk taker can you be? How ballsy can you be before you overstep your bounds? I'm not sure, because Malice apparently hasn't reached it yet. But she is really arrogant. She is super arrogant and believes that she is always right. That she just knows what needs to be done and how to get people to do what she wants. And in many ways she is right in that sense, and also there's been several times we've seen where she doesn't, and I'm just not really sure how she has survived a little bit, because she is just such a boundary pusher. She will take a risk wherever she can see a gain for it, and especially when it comes with Lolth and her interactions. So I really admire how confident she is. She pushes forward. She never has any doubts. She really fakes it till she makes it, in a way. And I think that that's why she keeps winning when it comes to her interactions with Lolth, is that she is just confident enough to feel like she deserves it and can somehow spin it into a way that makes it so she gets it. And so it just is pretty interesting to see her operate. I know that she makes even her family nervous in the way that she operates, but hey, if it works out, I guess it works out. Though I have a feeling this one's not going to work out in her favor. She's tried before several times to kill Drizzt or to get him under control, and it just doesn't seem like it's working out for her very well. So we're going to find out if the Zincarla that she got works out for her as well. She is definitely a dictator, 100% dictator. She is powerful, and she can follow through on her threats, which is why she has continued to keep her house under her thumb. And definitely we see in this beginning of this set of chapters exactly how ruthless she is. Her screaming, her interactions with Risen, and how she was bossing him around, and how she just easily flipped on him and locked him up. Of course, we know that she didn't end up sacrificing him, and it was all for looks, to make it seem like she was going to sacrifice him. But still, she is just scary sometimes. Of all, these Drow that are all manipulative and very dark beings, even Malice scares them. Scares Briza, who's really a top-notch Lolth priestess. Dinan, who's pretty arrogant and knows how to get out of things, is terrified of her. She really does have the power to just control her people and her family. We're really focusing on her and her predicament at this set of chapters. We're really focusing on the house's predicament and how they are out of favor, and the whole deal with House Hunnet. So she's really trying to manipulate things where she wants to go. She's trying to play chess with people who aren't doing really what she wants, aka Drizzt. And she hasn't been able to control Drizzt since. So I really, again, don't understand why she thinks that she's gonna have this work out for her. But she also doesn't have very many options. She's got to do this, or her house is going to be easy fodder. So, you got to take what you can get. But again, I don't really see any change from her from book one. She's kind of just a solid character that's just going along at this point. And we'll see if she changes, or if things, the stress of things crumble her down or not. But that will be something that we will find out later. At this point, she's starting off strong as herself, and we're going to see where things go for her and how well things do or do not work out. But that leads me to my next person for us to talk about, our last person to talk about for today, and that is Briza. So, Briza. Briza's another one where it's like she was in the first one and she was important in the first one, but she didn't really have a huge focus on her. We were still focusing mostly on Drizzt and Dritzt's childhood and growing up and his thoughts and his feelings, and we focused on Zach a bit. Now we're really seeing Briza fully with spending time with her as a character. And it's super interesting that she's kind of getting more of this spotlight, and I'm not sure what that means in terms of how the story's going to go, but of course we'll find out. But we're definitely more focused on her. We definitely are more in tune to what's going on with her. And she is actually in favor of Lolth, even though the house in general is not, which I find is super interesting. That Lolth is likes Briza, despite the fact that she is following her mother's orders, which is not going well for her, or Malice in general, and that house. That the whole rest of the house, no one's in favor of Lolth. It's just Briza. And maybe it's because she's the head of the daughters, like she's next after Malice, that she gets her own little relationship with Lolth. But I just think that's super interesting that she is in favor despite the whole house not being in favor and Malice not being in favor. And that Lolth is not taking into account that she is following Malice's bad decisions against her. At least I feel like that should go against her. And it's also interesting that she doesn't start her own house at this point, or doesn't kill Malice to take over the house and do things the way she would want it to be done. I wonder if she killed Malice and became the head of the house, if that would put the house in favor of Lolth again, because she's in favor of Lolth. Now, of course, you'd have to handle the whole Drizzt thing, and that might then be a tenuous connection. I'm not really sure, but I do know that in book 1, they've talked about how, the daughters kind of go off and form their own houses. And maybe she just doesn't want to start from the lowest bottom of the barrel with her own house. Totally get that. She's very ambitious. But I do know that she's been gunning for Malice's position since book 1, which was 10 years ago. So it's kind of interesting that she hasn't acted on that as of yet. Though, depending on how things go with Drizzt, that might change. And it might even change in the fact that Lolth might be very happy to have Malice out of the picture. But we really won't know until we read a little bit more. But Briza is very ambitious. Briza is super hardcore Lolth priestess. She's very much like her mother, except they have different tactics on certain things. They don't always coincide. Malice seems to have a good handle on things until now. Until Drizzt. And now Briza is definitely questioning her mom's choices. Sometimes they seem really great. Other times it seems not so great. And Briza knows. She is really thinking about her mother's choices and really remembers Drizzt leaving and all that. So I think she's going to be a real big contender in this one. We're really setting her up to be a big contender with focusing on her more. The whole, we're with her when she was out searching. We were with her when she's interacting with the Cinefae and her interactions with her mom. So we're going to see. But right now, she's definitely a big contender and very much a similar kind of person to Malice, except she goes about things differently. And in some ways, I feel like she is less forgiving and less thoughtful about things. She's more ruthless and if this doesn't work out, or if you don't work out, then just kill him off and be done with it. So she's definitely got a different style. So if she took over for House Do'Urden, it will be interesting to see the changes that the house goes through. The last thing I kind of want to mention for Briza is that we do get a glimpse finally of some weakness in her. She is really scared of Drizzt now that she's interacted with him. Like, she is hardcore, get her hands dirty kind of girl. She doesn't mind murder. She doesn't mind being the one doing it. She would actually relish that. And she is very proud of her ability to murder people and to be the strongest one and to put especially males in their place. So it's interesting to see that glimpse of that scared girl who almost got murdered by her brother because she knows that there is no chance that she could fight against Drizzt, even with the favor of Lolth. So we do see that fear come in, and that might also taint things as go on. We might see a change in Briza just because, not just because, in her dealings with Drizzt and how that's going to be resolved. So super interesting. I really think that these three main characters that we really focused on in this beginning set of chapters really set the stage for everything. I feel like these characters are all in a very dark place. Drizzt is in a dark place, in a different dark place than Malice and Briza. They're always in dark places. They're like thrive in the darkness of evil. But we're really seeing that brought out because we're not focused on Drizzt in the house of Do'Urden. We're just focusing on the main players of the house Do'Urden, and Drizzt is now separate. So we've really gotten to see Malice and get the full force of her, and we're now starting to get more of a full force of Briza. And we're going to see the politics that are going to be at play soon, I'm assuming, between Malice and Briza because of the difficulties that they're going to have with getting to Lolth's favor. And Briza is not happy a lot of times with what Malice has been choosing to do. So, super interesting. These characters are super interesting, and the plot so far is pretty interesting. So, we're at a good start for the beginning of this second book, and hopefully you have been enjoying reading it with me and discussing it. So, let me know your thoughts on any of the three characters on the start of this book and anything else. Last but not least, before we wrap up, let's do our nitty gritty. I've got 3 points here today. The first one is that Virna is still fond of Drizzt and wishes to see him again. Like, she genuinely loves Drizzt, I feel like, in the way that she can. I mean, she is obviously a priestess of Lolth, but in the way that she can be, she is fond of Drizzt and likes him and still has that spark of connection to him from when she was taking care of him when he was young. So, very interesting that Virna still has a fondness for Drizzt, and I feel like that could maybe play a part later at some point, that she might help him or something like that. We're going to find out if that's the case or not. My guess might be totally wrong, but I feel like Virna's being set up continuously to be an ally to Drizzt. Second thing, it's super interesting that even in a world where people murder each other, there's still a band of mercenaries that will do it for hire. And they've just like disconnected themselves from their house and just are going to be like, sure, like, let me just murder people for profit. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense in the fact that like a murdery community is going to have people who love murdering people, but you just would feel like they wouldn't need to hire anybody, and the fact that their own people don't mind murdering people. Usually you hire mercenaries to murder somebody so either you're not found out, but mostly because you don't actually want to murder somebody yourself. You don't want to take the fall for it, especially if you get caught, that kind of stuff. And they're just not up for actually being the person to pull the trigger. But in this case, everybody doesn't mind that they pull the trigger. They're more than willing to go and kill somebody else. And they're usually cunning enough to figure out how to not get caught about it. So I just think it's super interesting that they have a mercenary band for hire, along with all the people who murder each other already. So, I don't know, maybe that's just me. I I think it's just interesting also that they play all the sides. I mean, that also makes sense too, because why play one side when you can play all the sides? I mean, it does make sense. It just surprised me that people aren't doing their own dirty work. They don't really mind getting their hands dirty. What did you think? How do you feel about Gerlax and their group? And do you think their importance is going to extend further throughout this book? Or was that the end for the mercenary group? Last but not least, I wanted to mention that Matron Boehner seems to have given Malice Sinife, like she gave her the person, in order to help her win back her favor with Lolth. So, does Matron Boehner like Matron Malice? That's my question, is like, how much is Boehner actually playing things politically, like, to what she wants? Or is she actually interested in Malice and likes Malice, and that's why she's trying to help her by giving her Sinife? Also, she told her to sacrifice her when the time was right. Did she know that Zincarla was going to be an option for Malice and that she would take that option? It just seemed like Matron Boehner made an interesting choice without really knowing what Matron Malice would do. Or maybe she is following Lolth's instructions. I don't know, but I just think it's interesting that Matron Boehner is helping Matron Malice so much when she is actually out of Lolth's favor. Obviously, we know why she started the war between them in order to get Malice and her house into the top 8 houses. Because when they were in Lolth's favor, Lolth told Boehner to do that. But it seems like she's helping her beyond that, which I find is interesting. And we will see if that is something that comes up in the near future. So, let me know what you think, how you feel about things. I'd just really love to have a discussion with you about this set of chapters and this book, and I hope that you're enjoying reading it with me. That is all I had for today's class. Again, let me know if you have anything to relate to about it. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. If you were wondering, from the beginning of this class, when I mentioned I had dinner cooking and if I was going to make it within my time limit, the answer is a big fat no. I didn't make it in time. I did have to go figure out dinner stuff. It was I didn't make it in 40 minutes, guys. I like talking to you too much, okay? I just needed more time to talk to you. So I didn't make it. Just if you were curious if I did or not, the answer was no. But that's okay. I am now able to wrap up with you guys, and we were able to have a full discussion on this set of chapters. If you want to go ahead and talk with me and comment down below, it's not the best place for you. You are more than welcome to contact me on social media. I've got Facebook, which is /fantasyfiction1. I've also got Twitter, which is @fantasyfiction1. You also get updates from me there, different things that's going on, different announcements, stuff like that. So if you follow me there, you can get all that as well as talking to me, which I feel like might be something you're interested in. You can also follow me on Instagram, which is also @fantasyfiction1, which I'm a little bit slower posting there, but I am getting more of the hang of some ideas that I can do to post on Instagram, and I'd really like to have that. I'm having fun with that platform, even if I'm a little bit slower on outputting some stuff for you guys. So hopefully you will follow me there and just be patient with me if you do. If you want more content from me, though, you are also welcome to head over to the blog fantasyfictionfanatics.net. I've got book reviews, book recommendation. I've got different kinds of thoughts about fantasy books, reading, all that kind of stuff that I have over there. I've got terminology stuff over there, writing tips, a bunch of different stuff that you might be interested in, and hopefully you'll check out that blog and have a conversation with some of the content I have over there as well. Last but not least, though, is if you want to get updated on everything, you want to talk to me with direct messages, and and you think it might be fun to talk to your fellow fanatics, head over to the Discord. We've already got several people over there chatting about fantasy, non-fantasy related things, books, not books related, lots of different fun things that we are enjoying talking about together. And we'd just love to have you over there as well. So hopefully we will see you. The link for that is down below. Alright, I guess that is everything from me today, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.